what do you tell someone whose child wants to take on a career as a musician? Proceed with caution. Now, just a couple of days ago, I had the daunting task of talking to a mom and dad for advice on what to do for their young child who now is gifted with music, has the drive, has the desire, and they're just a mom and dad. They're not musically inclined. They just have no idea what to do. Now, I call this a daunting task because anybody that watches my channel, I give the unfiltered truth of what it's like in the music business. And I saw these videos, of this child singing and strumming away on an electric guitar, and it made me think about when I was that kid, when I was that little kid with that big oversized guitar and strumming away at the talent show and dragging that little guitar case and amp to the 4-H fair and the state fair in Richmond, Virginia, and lugging it to my first bar gig and playing, and I on one side of me, I want to I want them to proceed with caution, and on the other side I see the passion in that child, and I know as it stands right now, it's full speed ahead for them. And I get that. I would not want to discourage them. But, it takes me back to when I was a kid. And, my mom not really knowing what to do for me. What do you do with a kid that has the desire and the drive to play music, that's inside them, it's inside them, and they want it to come out. And this kid grows up in a normal town, and their mom and dad are there, and it's like, what do you tell them? What do you tell them? And I can remember being a little kid, and I had my uncle. His father, now he wasn't blood, but his father had been in the entertainment business, had owned a theater, in Virginia. And when we had been invited over one time for a family dinner or something, he showed me his wall, and I was just a little kid, and I looked, and he had pictures with Elvis in the 50s. And he had pictures with all these celebrities. His walls were just lined with it, and I was just in awe. But I was especially in awe because there he was with Elvis, and that was my hero when I was a little kid. That was the thing that set it off for me, is seeing that. I know a lot of people, from the previous generation to mine, it was the Beatles. But for me, I went back and I discovered Elvis. So I know what it's like to be that kid with that parent who doesn't know, what do we do? What do we do? My kid wants to make it in music. What do we do? So I can remember my mom, I kept saying, I need, I want to play music, and I need, help, and, and all this. And so she took me down to his office, my uncle's, father's office. And we met with him. And my mom said, my son really wants to play music, and that's where his passion is. And what do we do? And, I can remember being there, and I can remember I don't know if he had, had known the trepidation and how dirty the music business and the entertainment business was, but he really didn't offer any advice or any solutions. It was just kind of, we were, handshake and, good luck. And that was it. That was it. There was no solid advice, and we had no experience to know, what was to come or what this life would be like. And, the hardships that I would have to endure in the music business. So, my wife showed me a video of this, young person playing, and I saw the passion, and I saw, there's obviously talent there. And, I started telling my wife, get ready to struggle. And I started going down this path of, I say, how hard it is. You know what I've had to do. The people that watch this channel know I'm it's unfiltered truth here. And, she said, I know, but just, be not, don't scare them away. I was like, well, I don't want to sugarcoat it either. I don't want to sugarcoat it and tell them, oh, it's going to be awesome and, and all this. So I know I told the mom texted me and said, let me know a good time to call. And I told her a good time to call. And so I kind of waited with trepidation. And when the time that I had lied came, I all of a sudden looked at my watch and realized, oh crap, that mom's gonna call. But she didn't call right on the dime of the time. I waited till a little bit later. And I was at home, and the phone call came in, and she's telling me, I said, look, I've watched the footage my wife showed me. There's a lot to unpack here. And I get it. I said, initially, and I told her right out of the gate, I said, I had somebody one time come up to me in a bar, and they said, my friend or my nephew is a guitar player, and he wants to play guitar, and he wants to come to Nashville. And what advice would you give him? And I flat out of the gate said, stay in school, get a good trade, marry your high school sweetheart, and get a job. And they were kind of, oh, you what, And I was just like, look, it's tough, man. It's tough. It doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter, any of it, how good looking or how good or any of those things. It doesn't matter. And, your talent can lead you to some really crazy situations. But, I talked with them and tried to balance that with, look, I know your child has the passion. I see it. And I know how I was when I was that age. I had everybody telling me not to do this, whether it was the school counselor. And I told this mom that. The school counselor told me don't do it. The dentist told me to do it. The family practitioner said, don't do it. Don't get into music. And I don't want to be that guy, but I am going to tell you the reality of this life and the reality of the future that's coming. And the fact that, things aren't getting better for musicians. It's not getting easier. It's getting smaller, smaller and smaller what is allowed to, become big. And, I basically, she told me, she said, well, look, her guitar player recently died. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, really sorry to hear that. And, but I said, look, even, these days, you can learn guitar on YouTube, but it helps to have a great instructor. And I said, even some of the biggest teachers on YouTube, and I'm not going to name names, but some of the biggest teachers, I will click on a video for a song and maybe just to brush up on certain parts of the song. I'll click on it. I'll just be curious. Let's see how this guy teaches this. And I'll start watching and realize they're teaching it wrong. It's wrong. You're playing it wrong, bro. You're one of the biggest teachers on YouTube, and some of your videos are wrong. And that was a problem for me growing up. There were only so many guitar teachers where I grew up. And I had some good ones, and I was able to learn from all of them. But when it came to certain techniques and certain things that I would bring, sometimes we got it wrong because there wasn't YouTube. There wasn't, even like some of the big magazines that would have the tab and the transcriptions in them. A lot of those were wrong. It's, if you're a guitar player from my generation, you'll know because you get these transcriptions and it's just wrong. I think even somebody mentioned recently, and you can let me know in the comments, the Steve Vai transcription for Eruption, wasn't that it was marked, the taps were marked on the G string or something? I don't know. I would spend every now and then when those tabs and stuff came out, I'd spend, an hour or so, on the first 8 to 16 bars. And then that would usually be it for me. I'd get a little bits and pieces. And then I just go, man, I just want to play, right? I'm going to figure out my own way of playing. So, I told her this, and she goes, well, what does it mean when they teach it wrong? And I said, well, it's the wrong chords. It's the wrong fingerings. It's the wrong scale. It's the wrong, and she didn't really understand what that meant because she wasn't a musician. And it's hard. It's hard for my wife to understand when I listen to something and I go, they're singing flat or they're playing a wrong chord. We'll be having dinner somewhere and there'll be one of those solo acoustic performers and they'll be playing and go, yeah, sounds pretty good. Playing the wrong chord on that. It's like, well, it sounds good to me. I said, yeah, it sounds good because it's all diatonic chords, but they're going to be minor here where it should have been, this or it should have been that, and so, those are things that we notice, as musicians. But, people that aren't musicians don't get that. As long as it sounds appealing to them, that's all that matters. So, I was explaining to this person, I said, okay, well, I know they started out on ukulele, and that's what a lot of kids do now. And she kind of got that down. This kid got that down. And now was on electric guitar, but he had that capo on there and they're playing their songs with cowboy chords. I said, okay, she's playing the songs with cowboy chords. The next step would be get rid of that capo and get your bar chords down. Well, she goes, well, she's using that capo so she can play it in a different key for her voice. And I said, I get that. But I said, the same thing can be done without the capo, just sliding your hand up or down to the key that you need to play it. So, these are things that you can't really understand unless you're on the instrument. But I've always had an aversion to capos. I don't like them. I don't, I feel like if that's all is to play capos. And sometimes we have to use them in order to get the sound of a certain song in a certain key. I've had to pull out a capo every now and then, but I don't like using them. I think it's cheating. And it's not really learning guitar. If all you do is that, it's really just basic guitar. And I know there's people that have made great careers over cowboy chords and capo, but I still say you're not really a guitar player. But I digress. So what do I tell this person? So I'm telling them, they said, well, her guitar player had said he wanted her to learn correctly because, girls, you didn't want to be one of those girls that was just, not playing correctly and this and that. I said, hey, I get that. And I said, it's female guitar players have come a million miles from where they were. There's some amazing female players and they look very comfortable with their instruments. But there was a time where you would see, and it seemed like, the guitar didn't look comfortable in their hands, and they, it was a thing. And I think that's gone now. I think there are great female guitar players and they look comfortable with the instrument, and they're, certainly some amazing female guitar players, Nita Strauss and Laurie Basilio, great, amazing guitar players. I said that, yeah, I agree with him there. She needs to learn correctly. Yes, absolutely. And he said, well, he had told the mother that she needs to learn correctly so that she could one day be a studio guitar player. And I said, anybody could potentially do anything. But I said, the reality is this. There are 5 or 6 guitar players that play on, all the major sessions out of Nashville. Probably 5 or 6. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less. And I said, not one of them is female. And I said, there are probably 5 or 6 bass players that play on every session, and not one of them is female. There are probably 5 or 6 drummers that play on every Nashville session, every major session. Not one of them is female. And she's like, wow. And I said, I don't know why that is, but it is. So when he tells her that she could be a session player, now I'm not denying that, man, you could make that your reality, but it's going to be tough. And I added that they just bulldozed a major studio in Nashville. They just bulldozed it. So that's there's one less place where that's going to work. And I said, you guys are aware of AI, right? No, oh yeah, I said, do you realize that there is now AI where I can type in a prompt, give me a song that sounds like it's written in the 60s, and it has a Motown beat, and it has, a Motown style bass line, and it's got, scratchy guitar tones, and it's this, and it's about, blah, 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 blah. And boom, within a couple of minutes, it spits it out. Well, now the last thing I saw, and I think they sent me an email saying they could do this because I signed up so I could try it. I said, let me try this because this is research for my channel. And it's now saying they can, separate it all into stems. So They can send you all the separate tracks and you can mix your creation all by yourself. Separate the vocal. All the things that is good about a session, having the ability to identify each track and get in there and edit and create and fix and do all that. Well, now you can do that with these AI created music tracks. So I said, what do you think that's going to do to the record business? I said, they can AI write a song. They can AI create the tracks. It's done. It's over. So, and she said, oh my, that's a really bleak picture you're creating. I said, yes, it is a very bleak picture. And, probably should be telling you now that she should always have a backup plan. And, she said, well, she's really good at school and gets really good grades. I was like, well, that's good. That's great to hear. A lot of us, and me included, sometimes I got good grades at school, but sometimes I didn't. There was some math was, algebra was not something I was good at, and chemistry was not something I was good at. So, I painted this picture, and that picture with the AI, and the fact that there were no female, studio musicians that I was aware of. Now, there were backing vocalists, and maybe there's some mandolin players or utility players. I don't know. Now, there's certainly female musicians on tour. There's certainly female musicians down on Broadway. And, there's, and I told this parent, I said, what's the goal here? Do you want her playing in bars? Because I was playing in bars starting at 12 years old. And, I was like 17 when I started playing full time in a bar. Full time. Wasn't even of drinking age. And I'm playing with 40-year-old men, in a bar, in a divey bar, with, loose women and people of ill repute. So it's a daunting task having this conversation. And at the same time, I said, look, I get it. I see the passion there. I didn't listen to anybody either. So I don't expect her to listen to what I'm saying, because I didn't listen. I tuned it all out. Because, I had those stars in my eyes, and I had that passion, and I had that love for music. And that's really what it's all about. So, my wife was like, well, what did she say when you told her all that? I think I blew their mind. The dad was on there, and he was, he asked a couple of questions. He said, what I'm hearing is this. And I tried to answer his questions as best I could. And, I don't know what they took away from that ultimately. And I don't know what translated, to the child. I don't know, but I said, it's important to get some vocal lessons. It's important to get a great guitar teacher. It's important to stay in school and get good grades. And, the future may look bleak, but I did say this. And, with YouTube, I've always had some trepidation with social media and all that. And, the trolls I got to deal with from time to time. And, I've had people say some really nasty, out of line stuff. And, I try to keep it very, I keep this, channel relatively family friendly, And so sometimes I'll just delete a comment that's just not appropriate. But she's asking about social media and what she should do. And I said, there's always going to be creepers. There's always going to be trolls. There's always going to be that. But, this child was getting to the age where I said, you can be in charge of it. You can run their social media page. You can run their YouTube page or whatever. And I described, how I'm running this channel and the different, income streams that come from it. It's not crazy money, right now. Right now I'm just kind of treading water, kind of just plowing away. But I said, you could give her a momentum that would allow her to succeed. Building something, building a brand. Because I said, look, if you wait till they're 18, they could have blown their voice out already by then, doing these gigs, these little, gigs that they're doing. And I said, there's also potential for injury. I described a friend of mine that shoulder was like hanging on by a thread from years of playing. So, I said, you can be the guide here to build something, to build a brand, and give her the momentum that would allow this child to succeed. So, I would recommend you proceed with caution, but, social media is a necessary evil today. And, it is Pandora's box. It is, a thing that, you should proceed with trepidation, just like you should proceed with trepidation on a career with music.